Bozeman, Montana, June 12th, 2017. I hope you can handle looking at me for a moment with a bunch of cancer on my face. At least I didn't get villain lighting. So what I wanted to talk about a couple of things, and this is just more format of stream of consciousness, unscripted kinds of things, with just a couple of notes. It seems to me that a number of people are beginning to get the idea of what's going on with the Islamic State in terms of understanding the point that I want to get to immediately is the issue of imperialism and the misunderstanding of, for instance, the idea of self-radicalization. And I have a video of Brad Johnson, the former CIA station chief, on my website. And in that video, one of the things he calls the so-called idea of self-radicalization to be a lie, and begins to speak about it in terms of what the CIA calls tradecraft, and talks a little bit about how the people are trained and activated. And he even mentioned that, the possibility they could tell them when to do it, how to do it, and so on and so forth, in that sense, and that they're cultivating agents, and that they're more sophisticated than we're permitting the public to understand, which in a sense is certainly a form of racism. In a sense, is to simply look at these people as if they were just too dumb to do what they're doing. And so I wanted to point out to the question from that directly to the question of the Wilayat, which are strung across the world, from the Philippines to Indonesia, Southeast Asia, and Australia, and onward across North Africa, down into deep Central Africa. We have Boko Haram, which is now the Islamic State of West Africa, and we also have al-Shabaab, which we're getting a kind of a mixed signal here with the al-Shabaab, because we were just told, for instance, I believe through Long War Journal, that al-Shabaab had just confirmed its allegiance to al-Qaeda. But when they claim responsibility for a recent attack, where a number of Kenyan soldiers were killed, and they captured a great deal of military equipment, they were flying the Islamic State flag. So that leads us to the new Sarwiri video, where he calls it "One Fight, Many Fronts," which has just recently surfaced. I do not have that on my webpage because I always have to have some sort of caution that I can be seen as a perpetrator of their ideology or propagator of their ideology and or methods. So the first thing I want to do is just before that, the magazine, the Islamic State magazine, Rumya, number 10 was published in English and a number of other languages. Rumya means Rome, and in a surah in Quran, there is a section which is called Rumya. And so one of the things, and so this is all going to feed together and entwined with how is it that you know that you might be dealing with somebody of this ideology, because one of the things is when we get to the part about Rome, and it says, and Rome was defeated in Quran. It says, and Rome was defeated, and you get the little eyes and the little smile and the look from across the room, because you're supposed to be associating the United States and, of course, the Western world with Rome. And that's the reason that the magazine is called that, is because we're supposed to make the psychological association. Of course, when it appears in the Quran, when the Quran was written, Rome was defeated, it wasn't defeated by Islam, it was defeated by the Gauls, I believe, would be more or less around the same time. This isn't really about that. So when we're talking about the possibility of this coordination and the cultivation and tradecraft, where they're trying to, the projection from mainstream media, and certainly from the Obama administration, but I think the Trump administration, it's like, we have this little learning curve here with Al-Qaeda, but now the learning curve continues to steepen here, right? And we're still behind the learning curve here. So I want to take you to the next level. That's what this video is all about, because you're almost there, but you're not quite getting it. It's the matter of imperialism and how the Wilayat are not just groups who say, oh yeah, that guy, yeah, we like that guy. That's sort of how Al-Qaeda was structured. That's the way a lot of communist insurgencies are structured that way. But the Islamic State, the irresponsible remarks, the most irresponsible ones were from the last administration, when like John Kerry would say, they have nothing that even looks like a state. Well, that's not true. So I wanted to just talk about the issue of imperialism and being able to draw the association between the centralization and how the acts come from the center. And that when, say, Boko Haram goes over to Islamic State, becomes Islamic State of West Africa, it's actually controlled and articulated from the center. And that and the so-called lone wolf attacks, well, they might be an individual person who's carrying out the attack, but it's articulated from the center, right? Not just anybody. The Islamic State does not come back and say, oh yeah, we take responsibility for that, if they didn't have anything to do with it. And I have more to say about this. So the first thing I want to point out is that when it comes to articulation from the center, the first thing I want you to know is that the Manchester attack and the onslaught into Marawi into the Philippines happened on the same day. If you were in Raqqa, it would have been the 27th of Shaban, according to the calendar that the Islamic State uses. So, one thing went in one place, clear across the world, and something else happened on the same day. And I'm not trying to get into any form of numerology, I'm just pointing out that from the magazine that they just published, if you look at the dates where things happened, this is one correlation that's there. It's not necessarily completely correlated in a sense which is obvious, but you should know right away that these two things happened on the same day. So, I'm going to read you something from Rome number 10. On the surface, the operation in Manchester seemed to confirm what so many analysts had been asserting for some time now, that with the loss of territory in Iraq and Sham, the Islamic State would shift its focus towards carrying out attacks on Crusader soil. So this is the type of thing that we've seen on mainstream media. It's like, well, sure, we should expect more attacks in, say, the UK, because they're being squeezed in Iraq and Syria, right? Except this is not how the Mujahideen of the Islamic State see this. And I will go on. That's not what happened. They're not just simply lashing out in all randomly in certain ways. They're articulating a grand strategy of imperialism. Okay. The Islamic State would shift its focus towards carrying out attacks on Crusader soil. What many of these analysts failed to admit, however, is that losing territory was nothing new for the Islamic State. The loss of most of its territory in the wake of the Sahwa initiative in Iraq did not lead to its defeat. Rather, it only led the Islamic State regrouping, redoubling its efforts, rekindling the flames of war, recapturing every inch of territory it had lost and expanding into Sham, Sinai, Khorasan, and multiple other regions around the world, regions where no one would have expected that the Mujahideen would take control and establish the rule. Okay. The rule of Allah. So it came as no surprise when several thousand miles from Manchester, the soldiers of the Khilafah in East Asia stormed the city of Marawi in the southern Philippines on the island of Mindanao. Chased out the local police and the military and raised the banner of the Islamic State in a scene reminiscent of the liberation of Mosul from the Rafidi Mu'tadin and their Crusader allies. The victory came several weeks after Rodrigo Duterte, the Crusader Taghut of the Philippines, admitted that in the situation in the southern part of the Philippines was giving him a headache and making him lose sleep. This is the point here. This Taghut came into power believing that he had the ability to negotiate with the Islamic militants in the southern region of the Philippines, particularly in his own homeland of Mindanao, in the hopes of bringing it into the Jihad and subsequently expelling the American forces present in the Philippines. But when the soldiers of the Khilafah repeatedly demonstrated to him that they only negotiate with their enemies using bullets and bombs, he was reduced to begging the mayors of governing Muslim areas in the southern part of the country to help him deal with the Mujahideen, while simultaneously threatening to impose martial law in the areas if the problem wasn't tackled. Then, when the soldiers of the Khilafah stormed the city of Marawi, he held to his promise and imposed martial law, sending the military to try to regain control over the city, while the Mujahideen subsequently massacring dozens of his Crusader soldiers and kindling a new front in their war against Kufr. Okay, so this is the thing that I really, really, really want you and need you to understand. The Islamic State wants a Wilayat in Europe. Now I want you to think real careful, but not too long. Where, if you could, off the top of your head, think that they could establish a full-fledged Wilayat inside of Europe? A number of things might come to mind. Obviously, Sweden might be one of them. In my opinion, it would not be Sweden because they already own it. And these are the type of people who have the logic that they negotiate with these people. It seems to me, obviously, that they would want it on the Mediterranean. It seems to me then Sicily might be the most likely place, where geographically speaking and considering the numbers of people that they've dumped in there through the migrant people smuggling migrant crisis, that Sicily might be the most likely place, but we know that they need a Wilayat there. Therefore, that brings us back to the UK. And the attitude that the UK has is that they're going to negotiate with these people. We just be nice to them, right? And if you keep being nice to them, they're just going to like us right back. But we're in a situation like this. This is the reality. Kindness is to be taken for weakness. Absolutely, positively. There's no doubt about it. The Mujahideen only negotiate bombs and bullets. So, let's see. So, therefore, we can come to the clear and convincing conclusion that the Islamic State is not acting randomly. That the attacks, and not just the attacks, but the building of the Wilayat, like for instance, inside of London, as we saw recently with the March Against Hate and so forth, which has been brought about as a necessary development, historical development by necessity because of the existence of what is there. And so what you have there is the beginnings of the Wilayat there. I don't know that it's if it can take hold, but if you continue down this course, you will have a Wilayat in the United Kingdom. There's another video I was watching about what's going on in Sweden, and the guys and there are two police officers, and you know they talk about, well, there's a no-go zone. If we're chasing somebody on a crime and they drive their car into the no-go zone, we don't follow. But after that, they say something about how any weapon that you can find in Afghanistan, you can find in Sweden. So it's possible there. It's probably inevitable. That Sweden will be knocked over, but I don't think it's a major. It's immediate priority here because it's already in the bag, basically. And so then you got to think of the other places. I mean, Germany and France, of course. So I mean, this is the kind of thing that flies back right into the face of things like, you know, Rand Corporation, and people like that who say, we can't eliminate terrorism, but we can make it safer. Right? So they thought to themselves, it's like, how do we minimize the casualty? How do we create a situation where you can't drive a car down the sidewalk and plow into people and put their STEM brains to work real hard? See, people like, you know, Rand Corporation, what I'm teaching you now is the type of thing that Rand Corporation should be teaching you, but they can't because their education has been ruined. You know, the education system has been ruined. That's why they can't get to this. That's why they can't get to this kind of thing. Okay, so that brings us to the possibility that al-Baghdadi has been killed. Let's see, was there another thing I wanted to look at? Let me see here. Okay, no, let's see. Oh, okay, right. This is page 12 of Rumia. All right, there we go. Okay, has al-Baghdadi been killed? No, he has not. And I want to read you in this on page 12 of Rumi magazine. There's a quotation here. Which is relation to something else, but the same principle applies. That those who perish would perish upon proof, and that those who would live would live upon proof. And then the document goes on to warns people against making claims about the Islamic State without knowledge and ascribing beliefs to it without evidence. So, this brings us to one of the John Cantley videos right here. You see, the Islamic State would never not announce the death of al-Baghdadi. And the reason is this, and this is an excerpt from John Cantley's al-Halal. No, it's not that. It's inside. I can't, well, it's been removed from the internet. I haven't been able to find the full thing, but I've managed to dig up an old clip. And John Cantley's interviewing a mujahideen, and in somewhere, I think it's Syria, and he goes inside the bunker there, and he's talking to him, sandbag, you know, and everything. He says, and the man, he says to him, John Campbell, he says, they did not carry on this path except for this goal, to get killed for Allah's cause. Now, you see, that might not really sink in for the mentality that we have, but the goal of the Mujahideen is to make jihad and achieve martyrdom. Right? So, he's saying in this video, what does he say? He says, they did not carry on this path except for the goal to get killed for Allah's cause. What else? Let the disbelieving West know that the death of the leaders of jihad only emboldens and motivates us on this path by Allah's permission. So the objective is to get killed. He said, if getting killed could stop the movement, then when Muhammad died, there would be no more Islam. And so they've already, also on top of that, they've already announced that they've chosen his successor. The succession crisis has already been dealt with. They're far beyond the small mentality. You put off the small mentality onto them, but it's really your own small mentality that you voiced off. You know, right? They're not this dumb. So this brings us back to the new al-Zawahiri video, right? And where he's saying one ummah, one war on multiple fronts. So this could be the moment that we've been waiting for, because there was a genuine fitna, as it were, a genuine strife between al-Qaeda and Islamic State. When Islamic State blitzkrieged into Syria, they say, al-Baghdadi, he said, we have more power than al-Qaeda could possibly imagine. And it turned out to be true. And they've murdered some al-Qaeda people in some rather horrific forms, in horrific ways. And it was recently, I tweeted it somewhere that al-Qaeda has, you know, that they killed another al-Qaeda operative. But it seems to me, if you watch the video that's out, you can get it on Jihadology. Jihadology.net. See, you know, thank God they're not just completely mind-wiping the entire Googleplex. The video of al-Zawahiri is on there. It has English subtitles. I tweeted it. I didn't repost it onto my webpage. But if you read what he's saying very carefully, he brings up a number of different people in the jihad movement, al-Banna and some other people. You know, let's see, who were they? But you see, he's just pointing out the fact, let's see, al-Banna, Izzuddin al-Qassam, I can't even, Abdullah Azzam, and Osama bin Laden. And what he's really doing, Osama bin Laden, Abu Muhammad, Turkestani, Mullah Muhammad Umar, and stuff. What he's pointing out is that these people come from all sorts of different places. This is essentially the message. And so that's where you're going to be beginning to see that al-Qaeda has made this step, at least in, you know. So we could probably presuppose that the step that looks like a small step is probably a very big one. So he's underscoring the fact that these people come from all sorts of different places and they fight together as one for Islam. Therefore, the end to the fitna between al-Qaeda and the Islamic State, but of course it will not merge. Like it's not emerging. It's an all or nothing play, right? So even if they keep the name for a while or whatever, if they go in Islamic State, they're all Islamic State, right? They all have to go Khalifa. They cannot. I think the conflict was really about the murders and how, and the punishments and stuff that Islamic State was meting out there, and of course, typically you don't call Jews and Christians kufr. That's another thing. I don't think that Al-Qaeda ever, as far as I know, never really, and I don't know it from reading their literature, I just know it from people I know that were into that kind of stuff, never considered Jews or Christians to be kufr as long as they were practicing Jews and Christians. But this Islamic State there is kufr, or mushrikun, but we could easily accuse this kind of Islam of being mushrak, idol worship, because it's a cult of Muhammad. The whole idea of the Sharia, the Isnad, the Hadith and the Isnad, and everything, all comes out of a cult of Muhammad. That's mushrak. That was the point that was made by. Let's see here. Oh. This is one of the things, aside from being a numerologist, the cult the cult that he formed around himself is very much a revised version of Islam. It says there's no such thing as Sharia, period, because the Sharia essentially emanates from the proverbial cult of. Because of the cult of Muhammad. It comes out of the Hadith, which are stories that were gathered, around 300 years after the death of the Prophet. Usually these kind of almost sinister Christians who are out to prove Islam to be wrong usually go by al-Bukhari. Al-Bukhari wrote, they call him Sahih. They call him But al-Bukhari wrote a book that is called Sahih, right? But these people who follow this cult of Muhammad, the Sunnis anyway, call him Sahih as if he was synonymous with that. This guy gathered something like 30,000 stories, and there was a score of other men going out and doing the same thing. And so they go to the village and they say, when the Prophet was here, he washed his right hand before he washed his left hand. And then so-and-so, and the Isnad says so-and-so told so-and-so, who told so-and-so, so-and-so. And then so you got these jurists say, well, this is authentic hadith. So then that becomes a part of the Sharia. And so when you get to the issue of Muhammad marrying a 9-year-old girl and stuff, I mean, you really don't know. It's like somebody went to the village and then says, oh, the Prophet married a 9-year-old girl. I mean, do we really know that, or was it the tribal chieftain, the illiterate tribal chieftain who married the 9-year-old girl, and he said the Prophet did it, that means I can do it? I mean, we really don't know. And so what Rashad Khalifa did was he said that the hadith is spurious. Therefore, the Sharia does not exist, and that the Sunnah was a cult of Muhammad, was mushrak, idol worship. So he just axed it all. So he was assassinated in Tucson, Arizona in 1990 when Osama bin Laden declared him to be Taghut. Taghut, apostate worthy of death. One who exceeds bounds, literally. I mean, people like getting these stupid arguments. Well, technically it means one who exceeds bounds. And you know, brother, Islam is a religion of peace, brother, right? Because if you take the root of the word, S-L-M, spells salam, right? This means, exceeding bounds means apostate worthy of death. What this means is there are two worlds. Islam is a message of peace. This is one of the things that you got to hear. When you hear them, you got to get creeped out and know, because anybody who knows anything about Islam knows that Islam is not a religion of peace. In fact, it's to the best of my knowledge, George W. Bush coined the phrase, Islam is a religion of peace. But what there is there's one Dar Islam. 1, 2 Dar. Right? There are two worlds. The world of peace, Dar ul Islam, which is the world of peace. Wherever Muslims are together is the world of peace. If you're inside the mosque, world of peace means absence of fitna. And Dar ul Harb, the world of war. Everything which is outside the Muslim community is the world of war. Every Muslim who knows anything about Islam knows this. Islam is not a religion of peace. Now, when we talk about the world of war, it doesn't necessarily mean a hot war, though it does to these people, it means that. But traditionally, it doesn't really mean that. It means Islam is a proselytizing religion, so at least ideologically and so forth, it's seen as a world of struggle. You know, they're always trying to convert people, right? It doesn't necessarily mean a jihad of warfare, of gunfire, hails of bullets. I mean, it could be a jihad of deen, of religion, where you're essentially trying to convert people, right? So, if inside the Muslim world is Dar ul Islam, the world of peace, then, which means absence of fitna, how do you kill other Muslims? No, you just call them a Taghut. Call them Taghut. You know, you call them Taghut. You say they're not a Muslim anymore. You show them Takfir. Takfir. Takfir, somebody who knowingly and willingly left the religion, exceeded bounds, and became an apostate worthy of death. So, these are the type of things. So this is how radicalization, right? How does radicalization happen? What's the real radical? See, it's not radical. What these people are doing is not radical. This jihad stuff is mainstream, straight down the middle Islam. And another thing I want you to know when I'm talking about building a wilayat is that when you have mainstream Sunni Islam in large numbers, these people are there. It's not possible for them not to be there. This is how I told the Bozeman cops, like last year before the 4th of July, They just simply pulled me over while I was walking down the sidewalk, and I was a little tipsy. And they wanted to pick my brain about this, and I said, hey, it's going to be the largest crowd in Bozeman is going to be there. And when we got around to this thing about, hey, they're asking, had I seen anything around here up at the university and stuff? And I said, well, no, I haven't. But I said, well, they've got a mosque, right? Yeah. I said, well, it's not possible for these people not to be here, And so what does that mean if they're here? Does that mean that there's going to be a suicide bombing or a car ramming down the sidewalk? Not necessarily. What do they do here? They get their college degree for one thing. STEM. Man, you got to watch out for this. See, you look at these guys, and you take this racist point of view. I mean, and you come off and flipping me off, calling me a racist. I just explained a whole bunch of Islam to you, didn't I? I know more about this than a lot of people who actually practice it, right? They practice this stuff every day. I know more about it than they do. And how is this done? So they have the religious scholars and stuff, but all these people associated with Qaeda and Islamic State are STEM. And the reason for that is because once you've adopted this ideology, there is no longer any reason to study anything else. So you come to a college like this, you have your basic English course, your stupid liberal arts course, and then you will never be challenged on your ideas ever again, as long as you stay in STEM. And so they're very, very good at this. This is one of the reasons that they're so good at this thing called tradecraft. They're so good at producing the weapons. They're so good at the media. You take an advanced degree in media production to produce what they produce. High definition TV, crystal clear audio where you can actually hear the guy's throat go like that. So, they're STEM. So what do these guys do when they're in a place like this? This is far from the all-seeing eye. I mean, this is not exactly New York City or Boston or Phoenix or Tucson. Right? So you can buy your time here. You get your degree, right? So, right? I'm such a freaking Islamophobe, right? That's how I know all this. Right? It's because I sit there with books. I go to the masjid. I go to the masjid and lock myself in the library with my feet up on the table and read books about it. Everybody doesn't do that. Everybody who's in Islam, I mean, they hear it, and this is what I'm going to explain to you. Okay. This is what I'm going to explain to you, is what's going on. Why? How do I know? How do I know that they're in the mosque, and why are they there? Even if they're not going to commit a terrorist attack directly, if they're not going to do a suicide, why would they be there? I'm going to tell you why. Crew 2, 4. Okay. So this is what do they do? They say, brother, Islam says this, brother. This is how most people learn Islam. Islam says this, brother. They don't know that there's other alternative points of view, especially for people who convert and stuff like that. They don't know anything about it. They didn't grow up around it or anything. So, brother, Islam says this. Islam says wash your right hand before your left hand. Islam says step into the mosque with your right foot before your left foot. Right? So, and the other thing is like, brother, you're not doing it right, brother. You have to do it right, brother. And they do this thing in the mosque like this, like almost like a police stop. Boom. Another guy right behind another guy standing right in front of you. Brother, you're not doing it right, brother. You have to do it right. Like, for instance, if you have an image on your t-shirt or something. Brother, you cannot have images. But how do we have images of al-Baghdadi? How do we have images of Osama bin Laden? If you go back into the artwork of the Middle Ages and stuff of Islam, and there's all sorts of images. So, where does this thing come? Where there's no images? You know, or is it just a question of who's allowed to have images and who isn't allowed to have them? So, this is what we call, this is wajib. Wajib means, boy, I know you're getting tired of my video. Wajib means obligatory. Obligatory means 5 prayers a day is wajib. It means mandatory. It's mandatory, right? 5 prayers a day is mandatory. Mandub. Recommended. See, this is, I'm going to explain to you how you get to the radicalization process. Is besides what I did, brother, do it right. Okay, so recommended, but not obligatory. Can you receive an injection from a doctor? Some people will tell you no. Vast majority will say, like vaccinations, right? Can you receive a vaccination? Some Muslims will say no. Most will say no. You can get a vaccination, because not getting a vaccination is recommended, but it is not obligatory. If you want to make it haram, prohibited, if you want it to be prohibited, it's prohibited to yourself. You could say it's prohibited for me, but it's not. It's not for everybody. It's everybody doesn't have to go by it. Everyone is not obligated to do that. But you could adopt. There's a lot of different things. I guess that comes up off of my head, off the top of my head. So, my crew. Images. There's calligraphy and so forth, and geometry and stuff are preferred. Images, idols, cartoon characters, teddy bears. Can you have a teddy bear and be a Muslim? Sure, you can have a teddy bear and be a Muslim, but it's discouraged. It's discouraged, but not prohibited. Haram. Alcohol consumption allowed? Nope. Alcohol is prohibited. Alcohol is haram. It is prohibited. So the radicalization process is the process of removing these two things and taking those out the middle. Everything either becomes obligatory or it becomes prohibited. Can you have an image? It's discouraged? Nope. Images are haram. Can I wash my left hand before my right hand, or do I have to wash my right hand before my left hand? Nope. Wash your right hand before your left hand. It's wajib. You have to do it. Brother, you're not doing it right. I mean, they're watching you step into the mosque, and the guys are standing there by the door like this, and like, looking intimidating. And then you step in, I actually done it on purpose. Like shuffling my feet like this and see if they're looking at me. Step in with my left. And they're just like, brother, you're not doing it right, brother. That's how the radicalization process works. And that's how they move you along into the Sharia that they want you to be in, right? These two things where there was a lot of slack in here in Islam, where you could do a lot of different things, they prohibited is listening to rock and roll haram? No. It's discouraged, but it's not prohibited. right? It's going to the movies, the Hollywood movie Haram. No, it isn't. It's discouraged, but it's not prohibited. But they make everything into one of these two things. And they police, even though it says so, that you are not to be, Quran, it says you are not to be the policeman of other people's religion. In other words, so there's Muslims out there who believe that my religion is inside of my head. And it's not your job to police my religion. That's standard fare. Everybody knows that, right? But we've entered into this slide, this gradual slide of Islam. And I'm talking about even within within the last dozen years, even the separation and the elimination of these two parts in the middle. I mean, I'm sure, it's happened. How did it really happen? It started with this, it started here. Where did it start? I'm going to tell you, where does it start? It started with Ben Boz. Forgive me if I spelled it wrong. Ben Boz was a professor at Islamic University in Riyadh, and al-Otaybi was one of his students. And then Ben Boz went on to become the chief imam of Saudi Arabia. This is where Ben Boz got his from, Ibn Wahhab. This is what we always hear it about. Oh, it's Wahhabism. But this is really the source. This is in the 1970s. It was Siege of Mecca. Siege of Mecca. 1979. It's a great book. Yeah, there's a book called this. Guy writes for the Wall Street Journal, right? Wrote it. Otaybi and his boys, they took over the Grand Mosque in Mecca. There was a lot of death and everything. And so the point is that if you went back into like the early 70s and you watched video of Saudi Arabia, you'd see guys like wearing t-shirts and sunglasses and disco haircuts and bell-bottom jeans, just like America. So Iran used to look that way too. But after the Siege of Mecca in 1979, the monarchy imposed this very, very strict version of Islam. So you look at Saudi Arabia now. It's slid. So this happened like since 79, since 1970, 79, 2017. Okay. Let's do the math. It's like I'm so bad at this stuff. 38 years. So in 38 years, we've gone all the way to this. 38 years. Don't talk about Islam in the 7th century. This is worse than anything, that as far as I know. So, I suppose that pretty much sums it up. I don't want to take too long with this. I hope you'll actually watch my videos. I'm not getting a lot of hits, but I guess Latin and Greek just doesn't have the appeal. Jihad and stuff is like, such a pressing psychological issue, so important, and it's so important that we don't want to flood. This is one reason we don't want to flood America with migrants, particularly when the Islamic State has said that they'll pay 1,300 years from any jihadist in Africa to get to Libya, to get on the boat, to get to Sicily and southern Italy. So the Islamic State says they'll pay your way if you want to make jihad. So with the many thousands that we brought in there, that we've allowed, I guess we didn't do it. Well, Europe did, right? So you're gonna have a Wilayat sooner or later. And I know it's just getting more and more bleak all the time, isn't it? But I have to lift you up that learning curve, because if I don't do this, and you don't pay attention to what I'm telling you, we're going to end up sliding backwards down the learning curve, because these guys are taking it to the next level. I mean, they're outside the box. You know, we don't have outside the box thinkers, except for people like me who got panhandling the streets. You know, we don't have, you know, our military, our government stuff, our Rand Corporation. They don't have outside the box thinkers. They can't think. They can't think in these ways, and so we'll leave it at that. Over and out.